Welcome to episode 4 of the Theory of Anything podcast. Today we talk about a bunch of random shit and then recap the McGregor-Mayweather fight.
Nothing new about John Jones.
No, that's been crickets, man. Crickets on that shit.
Makes me nervous, too.
Yeah, that means nothing good. Ooh, I have one from something I saw from Daniel Cormier.
Okay.
Because he went on a podcast, and of course, of course he got asked about that on the podcast.
I mean, that's pretty much the only thing people want to hear him talk about.
Well, I mean, right now, I'm sure that's a topic of discussion in every room he walks in. Friends and family have probably, he's probably been like, okay, just don't fucking talk about that.
What else are you going to talk about?
But yeah, if he goes on any kind of podcast or radio, you know that's question one.
And the last question as well.
Yeah, oh yeah. Do you have any further thoughts on... God damn it. But... Yeah, okay, so I did see a thing related to Harvey where, Mexico, in the middle of, all the insults and shit that Trump's thrown out of Mexico, is actually, sending aid and supplies to Houston.
What is Trump doing that's getting everyone so upset? I haven't seen anything. I haven't had a chance to look at anything about it, really.
I've purposely tuned out, unless it comes rolling across my feed, or I'm just in the news or in the room and the news is on and I happen to catch a little bit of it. I've gotten where I'm purposely avoiding reading Trump shit, because it's either par for the course right-wing stupidity or, par for the course media blowing out normal right-wing stuff.
Well, it's nothing. I'm not surprised by anything anymore. He's like, Trump said this, and I'm like, well, yeah. Of course he did.
Well, you elected a guy who said ridiculous shit. Spoilers, he got into the White House and he didn't stop saying ridiculous shit.
I voted Hillary.
Well, yeah, so did I, but I didn't want to. That was more an anti-Trump vote. I wanted to vote for Gary Johnson, but...
It is weird how Hillary won the popular vote, but Trump's still president.
Yeah, but I mean, in defense of the Electoral College, California would pretty much decide elections if we went by popular vote. California and New York. And we would be liberal as hell.
That is kind of weird how the most dense populations of our country tend to be the most liberal.
There was a study I read on that one time where it's something about, having constant contact with so many people and people from different walks of life. It kind of builds up some of the more liberal populist ideals in the mind. So, and that could have just been absolute horse shit that I read one night while I was drunk on Facebook. So, I mean, I wouldn't take that as, some sort of groundbreaking political information. It's probably just some shit I read while I was drunk. But
that's legit research compared to some people.
Well, I read more than the headline, so I guess I dug deeper than some people would, but...
That's probably if I go through these weird phases where the smallest things become my worst pet peeve for a short amount of time. And I think that's the most recent one, is seeing on my Facebook feed people posting an article, putting their 2 cents in the post, and you read the article and it has nothing to do with what they think it has to do with. You know what I mean? The title is completely misleading, and it plants the seed of thought about a certain topic, but if you read it, it has little or nothing to do with what the title implies.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's almost like they didn't read a fucking thing. They didn't click it. They're just like, hey, I agree with that headline. I'm going to share it.
Well, why would a headline be clickbait? Headline is supposed to grab your attention for legit news.
Yeah, it's not like there's ad revenue for people visiting your site or anything.
Well, how else are they supposed to make money off of that? Because that's how you end clickbaiting, right? Is stop letting them get money from clicks.
Well, I don't know how you do that without doing significant web tracking on people for things like how long they spend at the article or something like that. So you probably can't. It's really stupid, though. Basically, a lot of that stuff amounts to a lot of what you see that's shared in the way that you're talking about, especially political. I think a lot of that is people going for that echo chamber, man. They want that. They want something to confirm what they're already thinking. Like, if you're sitting there reading something from a news source that goes ahead and calls itself, I think it's like Conservative News Daily or something like that. They're announcing their bias with the first fucking word. Like, they don't even get to the second word before they announce their bias.
It's conservative news, right?
Yeah, so it's like, whenever I see that, I'm just like, okay, well, you were looking for something to just, echo what you already think and confirm how you already feel about the situation.
And how many people do you think, not just Conservative News Daily, but any right-wing or left-wing news source it's obviously biased, how many people do you think that's their only news source? I have family members that all they listen to is conservative, right-wing news sources. And
yeah, I do too.
Their opinions reflect that, and when I try to talk to them and, not try to argue with them, but I try to show them, there's a different side to this story, I get called, whatever liberal name you can come up with.
Libtard?
Yeah. I've been called that many times.
I have too, and the funny thing is I wouldn't even define myself as liberal for the most part. Some of my positions are fairly liberal, but some of my positions are fairly conservative too. So I don't really know where the hell I belong. Probably independent. That's probably why I'm registered as one.
Well, it may be my bias showing through, but I think any sensible person would have the same description of themselves. It's like, well, I disagree and I agree with this side, but I agree and disagree with the other side as well, so I can't pick a side.
Well, you also have single issue voters is what you call them during election time, but you also have like people who their politics are based around a single issue. And the right wing has done a very good job of becoming the God party. We're the ones that care about Jesus. We're the ones that care about God and country. So, if you care about God and you care about your country, vote for us. They've done a very good job of packaging that. They've kind of married themselves to the evangelical movement, and through doing that, they have basically got people who feel like I've talked to people, it almost feels like they think they're going against their faith to vote anything other than Republican.
Oh, yeah, they feel like they're betraying someone when they vote anything other than what they identify as.
Yeah, and that's really crazy to me, because I don't see how people don't notice it, that those two things have and some people notice it, but that those two things have kind of married themselves to each other, but the right wing's done a very good job of that. They take really strong stances on certain what you would consider like moral political issues, and they ratchet down hard on those. And there are people who they vote right wing solely off the pro-choice thing, or actually pro-life thing, the pro-choice pro-life argument.
Right. Yeah.
Their stance on that determines their entire vote.
Yeah, but then this is extremely old news, obviously, but the election, you had sort of that mentality. It's like, well, anyone but Trump. Well, anyone but Hillary. It was such a weird election that I can't see it going through the same way again.
It's the most polarizing in my lifetime, for sure. It was the most polarizing in my lifetime, to the point where I was sitting here going like, man, this is probably the worst two choices for president we've ever been floated.
Well, there is that part of it, but this is also the first election where social media was a huge factor in the election process.
I feel like social media was a pretty strong factor in the 2012 election between Romney and Obama as well. At least, the right wing caught up, I guess, with how to use social media effectively, because Obama's team did a beautiful job of it in 2012. Using the left was definitely ahead on using social media and technology, where as an effective means to reach people. But the right wing caught up, and I don't know, man. It's got where it almost seems crazy to me, because I see like I don't know, it's like social media tribalism or something, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's everyone's mindset, whether they want to admit it or not.
I mean, I'm not immune. I'm there's somewhere out there, there's a don't give a shit, please stop talking tribe, and I'm sure I'm part of it. But
in a lot of ways, I'm sure, yeah.
But I mean, I get tired of seeing some of the same stuff. Like they spent like, what was it, like a week sharing and talking about Donald Trump misspelling a word in a tweet. Who gives a shit?
I mean, how hard?
Dude didn't spell check.
Well,
like, who cares?
I don't. The percentage of tweets that are from a phone that has automatic spell check or correction, it does it automatically. How hard is it to misspell a word nowadays on your phone, at least?
Oh, very easy. And also, I mean, by the way, total segue or like side note here. Have you got that new Android update that kind of changed around their like predictive text messaging and all that?
I may have, and I haven't noticed. Why? What's wrong with it?
Well, as a person who has to drunk text a lot, this thing is god awful at figuring out whenever my long jumble of letters was supposed to be like 3 different words. And
not good for the drunk texting market.
Not at all. And they got to understand, like, most people, when they start drinking, the text rate, it just goes up. So you got to be ready for that.
Anyway, if you hear a jump in the audio, for those listening, it's because we had to pause for a moment. We apologize. We're trying to gather our thoughts here. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. But all I was going to say is, like, after that update, it doesn't seem to be able to figure out if something's a bit jumbled and what it was. But my old one, for some reason, it just... I could type some jumble of letters, and, you know, like, my girlfriend would be, like, right beside me, and then I'd hit the space, and it would fix it, and she'd just be like, how the hell did it know what you were trying to say? So I'm wondering how they screwed it up that bad.
I have no idea.
Well, it's definitely, it's going to cause serious miscommunications in my life, and they need to fix it, because I'm certainly not going to alter my behavior to fix their shitty programming, so...
Oh, yeah, so going back to right-wing being automatically Christian, right?
Yeah, that's I mean, and not all, obviously not all, you know, religious people.
That's the stereotype, view,
but
right?
that's something the right wing's done a very good job of, is marrying themselves to, you know, faith.
Yeah, that's the stereotype, though. That if you're conservative, you're right-wing, Republican, whatever label you want to give yourself, you're also, odds are, Christian. So, my question...
Yeah, at least publicly.
Yeah, I was about to say, my question to you is, how hard do you cringe every time Trump brings up his faith in God?
I just laugh. You know, from my perspective, I just laugh.
I'm not
because,
saying...
if I was someone like, I don't know, like, who's someone who I think is really serious? If I was someone like Mitt Romney, who my faith being part of my political stance was like a very real thing to me, it would piss me off watching him flaunt around an obviously kind of false version of it. But if you dig back into, he's big on kind of the prosperity gospel type of thing, where that he thinks that his wealth and his station in life is, you know, proof of how much God loves him. That's, you know, part of the foundation of some of the beliefs that he's held, if you pay attention, like, who is close to him evangelically, which, I mean, that's fine if you want to take your own success as proof that God exists, but
the thing about Trump is, I don't know if he really believes it or not, but all I'm saying is that when I hear him say it, it sounds fake as shit. If it sounds just as fake as his normal speeches, because if you notice in his regular speeches, when he's just talking to the crowd, that's when you get those Trump quirks that everyone makes fun of right now. But when he's reading, it's almost like he changes his voice, and it's so obvious he's reading off of a prepared speech. So it's just as fake as that to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure somewhere in his head he holds some degree of what he's saying as some type of belief, because, I mean, he has had these people close to him prior to his presidential run, but it's definitely I don't feel that it's as big a thing or as deep a thing for him as, say, former President George W. Bush. I think that was, every time he spoke about it, I could tell that was a very real and deep, meaningful thing for him, very huge part of his life and part of how his entire mental, way of looking at the world was. But for Donald, I don't think it's quite as important to the Donald as it has been to some prior conservatives.
Right. I didn't realize Hurricane Harvey was as bad as it was until my wife told me it was worse than Katrina. Because I haven't been able to keep up with it. I've just been busy with so many different other things. I was like, the only thing I knew about is like, oh damn, there's a hurricane and going across Houston and that whole area. That really sucks. But I didn't know it was as bad as it is until my wife told me it was worse than Katrina.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was worse, but I knew that it's a very similar situation. Houston, not unlike New Orleans, there's levees there, and from what I understand, those levees have failed as well. It's an unreal amount of rain.
It's 3 times. It's over 3 times the amount as Katrina. I have this,
and if I got it right, it's because Harvey's a slower moving storm, so it's like it's staying there longer, dumping more rain, where Katrina just kept pushing on up the East Coast.
Yeah,
or pushing on up kind of the, not really the East Coast, but the American Southeast.
Yeah, what I read is that as it was making its way through the Gulf, it was a Category 1 for a while. And then right before it hit land, it turned into a Category 3, and then it stalled out at a Category 4, and it basically stalled out and stayed. And I have the thing pulled up here. Katrina was, I mean, you remember Katrina. We were in high school, so it was a while ago, but it was a big deal, really big deal.
It brought flooding here too, if you remember, because it came shortly after Ivan basically followed a very similar path and had come up the East Coast and dumped a bunch of rain here, and then Katrina did the same thing just shortly thereafter with the ground already soaked, and rivers and everything got out here too.
Yeah, but Katrina, I have it pulled up here, Katrina was 6.5 trillion gallons of water.
Jesus.
It's insane. But Harvey, as of yesterday, and as far as I understand, it's still going on, or there's still more to come. But so far, as of yesterday, they're at 21 trillion gallons. So that's over 3 times. That's almost 4 times as much.
That's insane.
There were places that were approaching, I believe it was 50 inches of rain.
Man.
What do you do?
Move. Get out before it starts. Also, little fun thing, and I'd have to look at the exact statistics on it and how much he changed it, but apparently there's like an Obama-era provision for structures that are built a certain amount close to the Gulf, having to be a certain amount off the ground to prevent water damage and to prevent risk of life, which sometimes is causing them to actually have to be built raised. And just like a few days before Harvey hit, like Trump signed something to roll that back.
Yeah.
And I was just going like, oh man, timing, dude. Like,
now, of course,
it was. Go ahead.
Okay. Of course, with any disaster, anything that gets on the news, it seems there's a conspiracy. I laugh because of how ridiculous it is. The conspiracy is, obviously, I didn't dive too deep into this because it's just ridiculous, but the conspiracy is something about Trump making the structure that you mentioned with Obama, the words are leaving me, the structure provisions, along with Trump signing those, or roadblocking those, in addition to HARP. You know what HARP is, right? You've heard that conspiracy before.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah.
It'll never die. It'll never die. Thank you, Jesse Ventura.
I don't even have my tinfoil hat ready for this, man.
Yeah. But just like with Katrina, because the same shit was being said when Katrina happened, it's a HARP conspiracy, the government's cloud seeding and manipulating the weather, and yeah.
I'll say the same thing I said the first time I heard that about Katrina. if we can make a hurricane and aim it wherever we want, why do we aim it at ourselves?
Economic purposes. You know how much money people get in donations?
Oh, speaking of donations, and I don't know, I can't even talk about hard conspiracies, man. It's just like so.
Yeah, moving. I just had to bring it up. I don't want to talk about it because it's too ridiculous. If anyone listening wants to hear people talk about HAARP, believe me, there's a plethora of videos on YouTube. Just do a simple Google search and you'll get all the information you want.
Or, if you really want to lose IQ that fast, you could always punch yourself repeatedly in the face.
Mm-hmm.
It'll have the same effect.
Wow. I sense a little judgment coming from you.
I've gotten worried. Stupid conspiracy theories at this point, I can't. Like, I can't even, like, if I get a new coworker and they start talking to me about stupid conspiracy theories, I'll just walk away from them and not talk to them anymore because I don't have time to try to refute people who have decided to go down the rabbit hole of crazy.
Well, a lot of them are crazy. A lot of them are far-fetched, and a lot of them are attention-seeking. But there are the ones that turned out to be true. I think that's what keeps that fire lit in a lot of people is that, well, this was true, so why isn't that true?
Well, yeah, if you fart out 200 million theories, one or two of them might stick.
Yeah. I mean, look at any, like, Nostradamus predictions or, the seers of history. People like to talk about, like, Nostradamus. Can you say his stupid name? Everyone brings him up when it comes to predicting the future and everything, but a lot of people don't understand how much he wrote down and how often he's wrong. And even the times he's right, he's not really right.
And also how vague it is. That's a thing with old prophecies and stuff. They're usually very vague.
Yeah, there's an art to being a psychic. There's an art to telling the future. It's designed to be vague, open to interpretation. They're going to collect your money and leave you to your own interpretations.
Yeah.
I just went on a mini rant there. I apologize.
Yeah. Well, also, though, side note, you were talking about donations. I saw this today that was pretty cool. Apparently, defensive lineman for the Houston Texans, J.J. Watt, he's raised over $10 million for Harvey relief aid already.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's money where your mouth is, because that's him really doing that. For it's his city. I mean, his team is based there, so. And I don't know if he lives there, if he just lives nearby, but yeah, the Houston Texans. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Oh, and did you see where Joel Osteen had to be like shamed into opening his church up as a shelter?
Who?
Joel Osteen, the big prosperity gospel pastor. He's basically one of these guys where believe me, donate your money this way, and God's going to bless you with riches, which, if you've ever actually read the book, that's not how any of that works, but that's what he tells people. So,
yeah.
And, apparently there's like a issue on, like, nobody's been able to prove it either way. Apparently they thought that it was like, the church was like inaccessible, and that's why they weren't opening it up, which would make more sense because they've actually done a lot to help out in the past. Mm-hmm. But like, everybody's just like blowing this guy up, and it's again one of these things where there's so many, biased articles about it. I can't tell whether he was actually being a douchebag or if people are just actually throwing some unfair criticism at him.
I'm not sure. But speaking of donations, did you hear about the former CIA agent that's she's trying to get donations so she can buy Twitter to get Trump kicked off of Twitter?
No, I didn't see that.
Isn't that the most far-fetched thing you've ever heard, though?
That's pretty crazy because, honestly, I don't want him kicked off Twitter. I wouldn't even donate to that, even if it would actually work.
Yeah, but a lot of people do want him kicked off Twitter. A lot of people think that the president shouldn't be spending all of his time, or even any amount of his time, posting half the stuff that he posts on Twitter.
I know, but what would I do if I couldn't wake up in the morning and see him write, a stream of nonsensical drivel and then just type the word sad at the end of it?
Very, very sad. Very sad. Yeah,
sad! Exclamation point. Stream of meaningless drivel.
Yeah,
it's the best entertainment right now from the White House is Donald Trump's, just consciousness vomit onto Twitter. It's great.
That's kind of a weird way of looking at it. We went through George W. Bush, who was just a walking comedy. Every time he opened his mouth, a joke came out.
And it was mostly just the manner he talked. He actually, he was, I believe it was Harvard. It's either Harvard or Yale, but I mean, he was like a major Ivy League graduate.
It was Yale because he was in the Skulls and Bones Society.
Oh, God.
Conspiracies.
No, man, come on.
No, but you have you have George W., who was, Iraq War aside, he was a fun president. He was a fun president to make fun of. He made a lot of people happy, not counting the war. But
I'm sure stand-up comedians absolutely loved him.
Yeah, and stand-up comedians, except for people who could do impressions, there was nothing really to make fun of Obama. But now Trump goes into office, and now we're back at it again. We have a fun joke of a president, and he has his hands on Twitter. So now this former CIA agent wants to buy Twitter, apparently for $1 billion, just to get Trump kicked off of Twitter.
Do you think he's going to last his whole term? And I don't mean any crazy, some nut job with a gun or anything like that. Nothing like that. That'd be horrible. I hope nothing like that ever happens.
Yeah.
But do you think he survives his term without getting impeached?
I think if not taking into consideration of any kind of scandal that might come up, I think he will. I severely doubt he'll get elected for a second term. But not taking into account of any scandals that might come up, yeah, I think he'll last 4 years.
I'm starting to feel iffy about it because if you've seen some of the recent stuff coming out from him, he's kind of turned in the past couple of weeks. He's kind of turned on Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan a little bit, and that's not Ryan as much yet. You're starting to see seeds of him, kind of turning on them a little bit too. That's major leadership in the Republican Party. If he angers his own party, the major real powers within his own party enough, and does something foolish enough, his party, his vice president, they love him. They love Mike Pence. So if he angers them enough and then he slips up, I could see them, colluding with the left to get him out and get Pence in the chair, someone that they feel they can actually work with. If he starts seeming like that, he's going to turn on them too.
It's kind of dark thinking about you're the president, you're the most powerful person in the world, but if your party disagrees with you, they'll get you the hell out.
It's not, and you gotta screw up. You gotta do something that, breaks a legal precedent and is actually, impeachment worthy. But I could see, if nothing else, I could see him being turned into almost a lame duck by his own party, refusing to go along with anything he wants done. And that could very much happen if they start to feel like he's alienating them and pushing them out to the side. They could get to where that they, just enough of them vote the wrong way on things that are very important to him to make him kind of dead weight.
But what if those things actually benefit the country? Would they still do it?
I don't know. I mean politics is dirty,
too.
Man.
Yeah, that's a dark thought.
Politics is really dirty.
It could be a policy. It could be a policy or a bill or whatever it is that would 100% benefit the country. But because they have a vendetta against him and because they're trying to make him look bad, they'll vote against it. That's a dark thought.
Yeah, I don't know if they take it that far. If it was something that was majorly beneficial to the country, but I could definitely see that. I can definitely see them dragging their feet on some of his agenda if he angers Republican Party leadership as much as he's angered, Democrat Party leadership.
Mm-hmm.
He could end up in a position where, because the president doesn't get to make laws, so he could end up in a position where he doesn't have friends and influence in the legislative branch to get his agenda done the way that he wants it done. So I think he's. If he keeps, blasting those two in public, I could see him making the wrong enemies and not being able to get things done anymore. I could see that.
That's possible.
which would ultimately cost him which ultimately most likely cost him the 2020 election, whenever he would look like a lame duck president.
Yeah, I've kind of had this thought for a long time, but the different things about Trump and the different things that we know about Trump and his daily life, you kind of have to think, does the president do, or does the president need to do as much as people might think?
I think there's a lot of different ways to go about that office. We've had very visible presidents and we've had very reclusive presidents. And then we've had presidents who were like selectively visible. FDR and his famous fireside chats where he would go on radio regularly and address the American people during the Great Depression and even during World War II to keep some sort of connection with the American people. And we've also had presidents who very rarely did speeches or addresses other than the yearly State of the Union address that they're required to do.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you're a good leader, I think sometimes the president can do too much. Because if you're always visible and half the country doesn't agree with you, you can start to actually become divisive.
Right.
And I think if you look at it from the perspective of like, it comes down to how much you think the country needs thought leaders.
What's that in the background?
It's a motorcycle.
Jeez.
At the neighbor's house. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a motorcycle at the neighbor's house. But it comes down to how much you think we need thought leaders, because, in times of like real strife or trouble, how much do you need somebody to unite people? You actually really need somebody to unite people during those times of like a real strife and trouble. But at the same time, human spirit, we kind of unite ourselves a little bit anyway. I mean, you've got people, going down the interstate to Houston with bass boats. You've got people raising ridiculous amounts of money. You've got Mexico sending aid, even though they've been publicly blasted by our own government lately. People, when shit hits the fan, people do tend to come together. I mean, some people are assholes, but some people are just assholes anyway. But I feel like you need somebody to pull you together when shit's like real bad, like Pearl Harbor bad, or Cold War Cuban Missile Crisis bad. You need somebody to pull people together. And if you look at all of our like legendary presidents, the ones that like, their names aren't hard to remember, they're on our money, they're talked about regularly, they've got monuments, they were all leaders during like particular times of crisis. But when there's not like a major crisis going on, how much does being constantly visible and constantly spewing your opinion actually create division within your country, where half the people are, publicly, whether it's now through social media, because that's a reality now. We have to treat social media almost like it's real human interaction now, because so many people have chosen to use it as such. And whether it's, constantly spewing their opinions there, whether it's actual public demonstrations, you could slowly become the thing that divides people as, certain people come out to oppose you, and then people come out to oppose the people who are opposing you. And now you've got people screaming at each other over nothing, when if really you just sat on your ass and done nothing, this problem wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a job I wouldn't wish on anybody. It's just...
I think you almost have to be crazy to want that job.
Yeah, you have to be some sort of wacko to think that, first of all, to think that you can do it, and second of all, to take those responsibilities. But this topic can be an episode all in itself, because it's just so involved in.
I mean, that's another thing where sometimes like little ticks and things that presidents do, like some of the stuff that people actually get all over Trump for, I'm just like, lay off the guy, man. Like, because I mean, and I'm not a supporter of his. There's pretty much a 0% chance that he gets my vote in 2020. But however, I do think he gets, and all presidents get, unfair criticisms and unfair things thrown at them. Because can you imagine actually knowing all the shit they know?
Presidents?
Yeah, can you imagine actually knowing that shit?
Like what? Like what's hidden in Area 51?
No, not just that. Like not just that. Can you imagine getting your daily intelligence briefing? Just from the military. Can you imagine getting your daily intel briefing on exactly what we actually know about North Korea and what they're doing? and what we actually know about what's going on in the Middle East, could you imagine having that level of concerns and problems dropped in your lap on a daily basis?
Do you really think that they brief the president on everything every day?
They don't brief him on everything, but they brief. There are daily intelligence briefings, and that's some of it is par for the course. But would you like to daily know the bigger concerns, the larger concerns?
Do you think that he knows everything? Do you think they tell him everything? Because, I mean, think about it from their perspective. Trump's always on Twitter. Trump's always in front of a camera. That's something that I've heard before, is that of course a president doesn't know the most sensitive information about the CIA, FBI, or Area 51, whatever, because, well, for one, they're a temporary employee. They're only there for at most 8 years. And they're always in front of a camera. They're too public to know certain things.
But I mean, just the level of stuff you'd have to know to be an effective commander-in-chief. That's the thing. I mean, he definitely knows more than we know.
Well,
he definitely knows more. I mean, consider the level of anxiety that just what you read about North Korea can cause in the average citizen.
I would love to see his face when he was briefed, and when he just got elected and he was briefed on everything. Because there's pictures of him not long after that where he just had this look of, oh shit, what did I get into? And it's
are you talking about the pictures of after his first closed door meeting with Obama?
Yeah,
where he's sitting there and he has obvious concern written across his face.
Yeah,
and it's just because I mean I'm sure Barack Obama dropped in his lap a few of the things that are presidential level concerns, and he was just like, hey, shit. And Obama in that same picture, he looks a lot more relaxed, probably because he's thinking all right, I don't have to worry about this for much longer.
That has the last week of an 8-year term has to be the longest week in anyone's life. Just it's right there. Just got to get through 7 more days. Just 7 more damn days of this damn job. It aged him. I mean, look at Obama in 2008 versus Obama his last year in office. That job has to take its toll on you, just on how much Bush aged and how much Obama aged. And Trump
president.
Yeah, and Trump already looks like shit, so I'm interested to see what he'll look like at the end of these 4 years.
I don't know, maybe he won't have time to spray tan him anymore.
Every time I see him, I always think about how long did it take for him to put his hair like that? Does he have people to do it, or does he do it himself? And how long does it take? And what does he look like in the morning? What does he look like after a shower? Is it a wig? I mean, the train of thoughts and it's all about his hair. I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm just thinking about his stupid hair.
Wow, I think you spent more time thinking about that than probably most people.
Whatever. Everyone's had that thought. What is it made out of? How much of it is actually his?
It's just thinning old man hair that is probably longer than it should be for how thin it is. That's all it is. I don't know. I do think that I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want to know about all that stuff, and I definitely probably wouldn't have time to worry about fixing up my hair.
At a certain point, you would have to reach a point of fuck it.
I'd probably do the same thing as Barack did. Just keep it really close and short, and just not worry about.
I always like that though.
Yeah, I'm just saying that'd probably be my solution. Be all right, well, we're just going to remove hair from my concern and keep this thing at the shortest length on my buzz cutter. We're just going to make this something I don't have to think about.
As someone myself who is bald, I shave my head bald. Talking to you, who last I saw you, your hair was past your shoulders, probably back.
Oh yeah,
it's so much better just shaving it. Fuck hair.
I look goofy bald.
I'm not saying bald, but the more hair you have, the more annoying it is. Well, we've already spent close to an hour talking about bullshit, so let's talk about the results of this fight.
Oh, yeah. So, first of all, he lasted longer than I thought he would.
I got to say something before we really get started, just because I know you have a lot to say about it.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, you were partly right in your prediction. I believe in the last podcast, the last episode, you said that he would gas out by round 8, I think you said.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, he probably started gassing out a little bit earlier than that. But
and I basically just did math to get that was all. Like I looked at how long a UFC fight is and how long a boxing match is, and
right.
I was like, well, that's around the longest he's gone, so that's probably about when he's going to start to gas.
Yeah, but before we get too far into this, I just want to say my opinion on it. Considering the prep time he had, considering the skill gap, considering the pressure, he did a phenomenal job. Even though he lost, and I was pulling for McGregor just because of the spectacle of it, and I never really been a Mayweather fan. I respected Mayweather, but I've never been really a fan. But I'm a fan of Conor's, and even though he lost, I loved that fight. I think he did amazing. Well,
he did better than a lot of people thought he was going to do. But also, I mean, first of all, I've seen so much criticism for the referee in that fight.
Why?
People say that he wasn't like letting Conor do his thing. Well, Conor's thing is illegal in boxing. Well, where like there's points. And I just rewatched the fight right before we got on here, so This is all fresh in my head. There's points where and Floyd turns his back on people anyway. He kind of does it. It's really frustrating. But even at points where Floyd wasn't doing that, Conor was actually like slipping around to his back, and then when he got behind him, he actually was like hitting him in the side of the head from the back.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely illegal in boxing, and all the referee did was warn him. He didn't take any points for it. He didn't take any points for the rabbit punches, which are illegal in boxing. He didn't take any points for hitting Floyd in the top of the head, which is also illegal in boxing.
A lot of rules in boxing.
Yeah, but with all these things taken into consideration, he was very fair to Conor. He was very fair.
He was like very lenient. He was very lenient. He could have punished him. He could have taken points off because he kept doing it.
Yeah, if a seasoned boxer did some of the things that Conor was doing, they would have taken points from him. Wow. He was actually given a little bit of leeway to work in that fight because of the fact that he's not a seasoned boxer. I felt they did a very good job at that. And also the stoppage. If I hear one more McGregor fanboy crying his eyes out, screaming at the top of his lungs that was a bad stop and that Conor could have kept going, blah, 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 blah.
Here's the problem with people who think that. Most of the time, people who think that they love watching fights for the blood, for the people getting knocked out on their ass. They don't appreciate the technical aspects of it. They don't appreciate the fact that McGregor was out. Conor was out on his feet. He could barely stand. That stoppage was 100% legitimate and 100% fair and necessary. Conor said himself he wanted to keep going, but that's just a fighter in him.
Yeah, even Dana White has said that he was good with that stoppage, that he thought for Conor's experience level that it was very sensible to stop the fight right there.
Right.
So all the people in the know are in agreement on this. But I see so many crybabies that thought that Conor should just go out on his shield and all that. He already did. He was gassed in the 9th. The advice he was given in his corner, he was gassed in the 9th and he took a lot of punishment in the 9th. The zip was out of Conor's punches from pretty much round 6 on.
Yeah.
And he was starting to push his punches. If you notice at around the midpoint of the fight, round 6 or so, Floyd seems to stop evading as much as he was, and he starts like putting serious pressure and pushing Conor and just coming in with his hands up and occasionally taking one to land one. That's not Floyd Mayweather's game plan, and he said after the fight that he felt him pushing his punches and realized that he didn't have the power left in his hands to hurt him anymore. Mm-hmm. So halfway through that fight, Floyd Mayweather decided Conor was no longer a threat, and he was just going to walk him down and punish him and beat him halfway through that fight.
Yeah.
Also, a few seconds before the stoppage, about 10 seconds before the stoppage, he lands a right hand that is just right on the button, and Conor goes staggering backwards across the ring.
Yeah, that was right before the stoppage.
if there was a standing 8 count in this fight, they probably would have given Conor a standing 8.
Yeah.
If there was a standing 8 in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, this fight's rule set, I don't know if that came from Floyd's camp or Conor's. Probably came from Conor's, honestly, because MMA doesn't have a standing 8 count. Standing 8 is pretty par for the course in boxing.
Yeah.
So he goes staggering across the ring, and Floyd comes over, and Conor's hands are like down at like chest level. Like, so he's not really protecting himself anymore. That's one of the first instructions you're given is protect yourself at all times.
As far as I remember it, a majority of that round and the previous round, his hands were below his waist.
Several times, yeah. But his hands are down, and he's not sending anything back at Floyd. And he's starting to, like, duck. His head was about to go outside the ropes at the point where the referee stepped in between them.
Mm-hmm.
And Floyd was just landing at will. The referee spared him a minute and 55 seconds of absolute brutality. And even if he could have got the wind back, because his corner had told him to just throw an uppercut and then lay on him every single chance he got during that round. But every time that he tried laying on the floor on Floyd during that fight, Floyd was doing things like keeping his forearm in his face so that he couldn't breathe and stuff like that. Floyd was doing a lot of dirty boxing in the clinch.
I was about to say, that's illegal, isn't it?
It's a gray area illegal. If you can't hit him with the forearm, but if you're just in the clinch and your arm just happens to be there, it's like gray area illegal. It's like prove that I'm doing this on purpose. So it can look like you just don't mean to do that, but yeah, he's keeping his hand in his forearm in Floyd's face. In Conor's face. There's just a lot of the in the clinch was not going all that great for Conor.
The ref kept breaking it up. I mean, he probably was relying on those clinches to get his rest, but as soon as they clinched up, the ref separated them. And he wasn't
really helping Floyd out with that either, because Floyd was getting the better of those clinch situations, the better of the in-tight boxing, the better of, like, he would take and have his hand on McGregor's glove and then just, slip his arm out of that underhook and pop him on the inside, which is totally illegal. That's fully legal. That's fully legal. That's just in-tight boxing in the clinch. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, it's called chest to chest, isn't it?
Yeah, and but that's the thing that I feel like a lot of people don't realize is they don't realize that the only way in which you look at that fight and feel like Conor did good is you remember that Conor's not a boxer.
Mm-hmm.
He looked better against Mayweather than some of Mayweather's other opponents, but Mayweather's other opponents didn't have him just coming for it. I mean, in round 4, he looks over and winks at the camera during the fight.
Who did?
Floyd.
Really? I didn't see that.
Yes. Floyd winked. Floyd winked at the announce. Floyd winked at the announce table during round 4.
Savage.
Yeah, he knew. He knew he was not going to lose that fight. He said he'd already decided before that fight to just come forward. And that's crazy. That means he didn't think that Conor could hurt him.
There was a moment early in the fight, I don't know if it was round 1 or 2, where Conor hit him, and it was a clear hit. And Floyd smiled at him, and it was just the way he smiled at him. It was kind of like that moment where you feel like, okay, I can do it. He's not laying in. I'm going to get through this. You know what I mean? It was just something about that smile that was like, oh God, he's not. I mean, a lot of people are saying that Conor wasn't laying into his punches, that he was more or less tapping compared to what he normally does.
Early on in the fight, he had a lot of zip and snap in his punches. Mm-hmm. I think he knew that he couldn't sit 100% of his power on his punches and then connect with Floyd.
Well, there was that uppercut. I thought that would hurt Floyd more than it did.
Yeah, and Floyd was fine.
I was surprised because when that landed, I was at a restaurant watching this fight, and it was brutal. Like you were texting me that you were saying that you wanted to rewatch the entire pay-per-view, or at least the undercards.
I want to rewatch the undercards too.
Dude,
I just haven't got to yet.
It may have been because I was waiting there for 6 hours until the main event. So by the time the main event came, I had enough of undercards and prelims and all that shit. But you said that the undercards were impressive, and I'm just like, no.
All of the undercards except for the very last one, Tabiti's fight was really impressive. I really enjoyed watching him. You actually saw more of Floyd's traditional style from Tabiti. He's a TMT fighter, money team.
Yeah. Well,
you saw more of Floyd's style from Tabiti than you saw from Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Well, not to get too far off topic, but as a matter of fact, what the hell was I saying?
And you should at least see Badu Jack's knockout again. That was pretty awesome.
Okay. Well,
those two at least you should see again.
What was I saying though? Oh, the uppercut.
You had enough undercards.
The uppercut. I was at a restaurant watching this fight, the whole pay-per-view, and when he landed that uppercut, everyone kind of went crazy as if he knocked Floyd down, because it was early in the fight and it was such a clean shot. I guess it was 100% flush, because I think, if I remember correctly, again, I didn't watch the whole thing a second time, but I think it glanced off his chest or maybe his arm a bit, but it was a pretty solid hit. And I was surprised that it didn't do more damage than what it did.
Well, the way that it snapped Floyd's head back, it hit him hard. Yeah. But it didn't phase Floyd, because I think people are under the impression that since Floyd doesn't get hit a lot, that Floyd can't get hit. No. Floyd is really hard to hurt. He's tough. He's such a great defensive fighter that people didn't give him the credit for how tough he also is. And I mean, Shane Mosley could tell you how tough he is. Shane hurt him. Shane was one of the few people in his career that hurt him. And then Floyd just came back out, and he could hardly lay a glove on Floyd for the rest of the fight. And Floyd didn't fight his normal game plan. He could have fought his "you're not going to lay a glove on me" game plan during this fight. He didn't want to do that. He actually said in the post-fight, "This fight was for the fans. I wanted to put on a show." He was deliberately out there fighting outside of his comfort zone, going, I can't tell you how many times in my career I've seen Floyd put both hands around his head and press in on a guy.
Yeah.
That's not the Floyd Mayweather we know, but it's the one he wanted to show us, and one last time that he could come out here, and that's the thing. Everybody talks about how good Conor did, and I don't want to take anything away from him because he went outside of his sport. But people who think that Conor did a better job than, say, Miguel Cotto, the only reason Conor's punch stats look so good is, A, he was putting nothing on his punches from like round 5 on. A lot of them were just tap shots. They were just score shots. There was nothing behind them. And Floyd was not playing his usual defensive "you're not going to hit me" game plan. He was coming forward and accepting some of Conor's offense, because once he felt Conor pushing his punches, he said in the post-fight that it was that he hits strong, but he said it's not the kind of power that he felt he couldn't come in, or he wouldn't have come in.
Yeah, but
he said that Conor's definitively not the hardest puncher he's ever faced.
But I also think it's important to mention that it's not like Mayweather was just going face first into Conor. It was Conor was holding his own for a while in the boxing game. He was coming in with really weird angles that Mayweather is not used to, and he was catching him.
Oh, his angles, even inside of like traditional boxing sections. I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I forgot. That was one of the bits of praise I wanted to throw at Conor. His angles in that fight were beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like very, very beyond his level of boxing experience. The angles he used in that fight. There were some times where he actually turned Floyd, and as Floyd comes in, he caught him as he was turning. Some of the angles and windows that Conor worked with were actually they looked like a fighter with a lot more experience than he actually had.
And that's what a lot of people were saying about Conor during the fight and after the fight, is like, all things considered, Conor can box. He's a pretty good boxer. He definitely has potential in it, but his conditioning and his cardio are a huge problem for him right now.
And he's going to have to learn how to sit on the types of punches that will do damage in boxing.
Yeah.
There's little subtle differences, and he wasn't able to like really bring his power to bear in this fight the way he does in MMA. And that's because boxers who train their whole life just to punch, there's some pretty serious power. There's no way he hits as hard as, say, Canelo. And that's, same weight. So I don't know. I was impressed with his skill early on before he got tired and started getting sloppy. I found that some of that stuff he was doing to change the rhythm of the fight was really was really interesting, and I feel like he could expand on that and do better with it. But at the same time, I don't feel like he pushed Floyd. I don't feel like he threatened Floyd. I don't feel like Floyd ever thought he was at a risk of losing this fight. And that means it truly, is a dominant final performance for Floyd, and it should have been. That's what it was always going to be in my mind. But I don't know. I just so many people thought there were people that thought Conor was winning on the cards, and I laugh at that. I've seen I don't know who said it, but apparently someone gave him 8-1. Yeah, someone gave him 8 rounds to 1, and I'm just like, what fight are you watching?
How many did you? Well, they were. I don't know if this is their words, but the elaboration that went along with this was that Floyd was letting him come in at him and land those punches. He was trying to figure him out, or this
doesn't matter. A scoring shot is a scoring shot, and Conor and Floyd was doing that. Floyd, do you know how many punches Floyd threw in round 1? Total punches he even threw. He threw only 6 punches in round 1. Floyd only threw 6 punches in round 1. McGregor threw 34.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the punch stats in front of me. The total landing percentage for Conor is 26%, which is 10% higher than Floyd Mayweather opponents typically land.
The Pacquiao was 19%.
Yeah, I don't want to bring up Pacquiao because Pacquiao was fighting with one arm.
Okay, but still, I mean, is it, if I don't have this pulled up, maybe you do, the Shane Mosley fight, I believe, is the second most landed punches against Floyd. Is that right?
I don't have Shane pulled up.
I may have the name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Mosley. But I believe Conor's was 111 and Mosley's was 108.
Mm-hmm. Mosley landed more effective shots than Conor did. Mosley actually hurt him.
That could be, but yeah, because I don't have it in front of me. I wish I did for the percentages. Because
when you get to rewatch the entire fight, one thing to look at. Notice how many of these shots that are counting for McGregor are literally just him, like, his arm is almost fully extended and then he just, like, snaps his hand just a little bit forward and touches Floyd. Well, that scores. That counts, but there's nothing on it. It's not going to hurt him.
Yeah, but it's just one of those statistics that's interesting when you're talking about the best defensive boxer of all time.
Who also was not fighting his usual defensive game plan. That's the other thing. He was coming forward and pressing and wanted to knock Conor out. He said he wanted to knock Conor out. And unlike the many times in his career Floyd said that and he didn't do it, he came out, he put his gloves up and was pressing Conor. Oh, the other thing, if Conor boxes again, one thing I want to see him do is actually tuck his damn chin.
I know, right? Dude, I was standing in the middle of that dining room at that restaurant screaming at the TV to put his hands up, tuck his chin. It was like, damn it, dude. And every time he would do an illegal hit on Mayweather, I was like, stop doing it, But
yeah, that's one of the things that, like, he really needs to work on, even if he keeps his hands low, because there's been a lot of fighters that keep their hands low. Floyd sometimes keeps his hands low. But
Floyd can. I don't think McGregor can.
He actually did some slips early on in that fight when he had his wind. He slipped some of Floyd's punches, like some fast punches, and I was kind of surprised that he had the head movement to do that.
Well, yeah. But I think his defense needs work, and definitely his cardio.
Oh, his defense needs work, his cardio needs work, and even if you're not going to learn how to block every single punch, for God's sake, tuck your chin. He was keeping his head, like, high, and I'm going like, oh my, don't. And I know why he's doing that, because, like, in MMA, you can kind of get away with that some. It's not as much about...
sometimes, yeah.
Not sometimes, especially if you're like him and you're the one that's usually the one controlling the range.
Yeah, if you're controlling the range, definitely, but definitely not in boxing.
And in MMA, he wasn't doing it in the boxing match. I noticed he was still keeping his chin up in some situations in the boxing match. In MMA, once somebody closes the gap on him, he will tuck it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once somebody closes the gap, I'd see him pull it in. And then in this, I guess he didn't have respect for Mayweather's power. So he wasn't doing that. It's just, but it's one of these things where I would like to see him box again, and I would like him to be. He never will be until it's after the defeat. I'd like him to be a little more humble, because with so much of his lead up and him talking about how Floyd, how he was going to wreck Floyd and all that.
But did you see the post-fight interviews and stuff? They were completely like friendly, all hugs and smiles and congratulations.
Oh yeah, it's always like that. It was to hype the fight, and it worked, because even though I know it's to hype the fight, believe me, when I was watching it the first time on pay-per-view and I was drinking, whenever he staggered back across the ring after that right hand from Floyd, I was on my feet. And then whenever that referee stepped in and called that, I actually just yelled at the TV. I was like, that's right, get the fuck out of boxing. You get your ass back to MMA where you belong.
Oh, come on. See, you can't talk down to someone who took that chance. I mean, it's not like he came to boxing and fought anybody. He fought the best, arguably the best boxer ever, and held his own for a good while. Of
course.
I could not name you another fighter in MMA that could do the same thing.
Nate Diaz.
I don't want to agree, but I don't want to disagree either. But
according to Freddie Roach, he was asked one time which MMA fighters he thinks could make it in boxing. And I don't remember all of his answers, but the top three were George St. Pierre and the Diaz brothers.
Yeah, make it in boxing, but against Floyd Mayweather, winning, in my opinion, 4 out of the 9 rounds.
I gave him 3.
First 3 rounds.
I gave him 1, 2, and 3. 4 is difficult to call. 4 could kind of go either way, but 4 is where Floyd was landing a lot of counter shots.
I had 4 going to Floyd. I think I gave the 4th one to McGregor. I believe it was... I wish I had written it down. I think it was the 6th round that I gave to Conor.
Right. You might give him that off of punches that touched, but in that round, with the punch stats in front of me, Mayweather landed 27 punches to McGregor's 19.
Okay. It may have been a different round then, but at least definitely the first 3 rounds. And yeah.
4 is the iffy one, because it's actually 16 punches for Mayweather, 16 punches for McGregor, but Mayweather threw less.
Yeah. And there's a whole lot of factors that goes into that, I'm sure. But as far as making it as a boxer in general, yeah, Diaz can do it. But to go against Floyd Mayweather and do the same or better than McGregor, I'm not convinced.
I would feel like that Nate could definitely box. I feel like if this fight was Nate, well, honestly, I feel like Nate could do better in boxing even against Floyd than Conor did. And that's because Nate Diaz is a better boxer. He's got more experience in it. He's trained it more. I mean, he's worked multiple times with Freddie Roach, and I'm basically just taking the opinion of someone who is really knowledgeable. Freddie Roach saying that he could be a successful boxer.
I mean, it's a safe bet. I mean, like I said in the last episode, I'm not an expert in either of them. I'm just fans of both of them. So it's 100% my opinion. I was wrong about Conor. I was, if you remember the last episode, I wasn't putting my money on Conor, but I was hopeful for Conor. But I didn't.
Yeah, and I was on the no way side of things.
And you were right, but a lot of people were wrong when they were saying that he wouldn't win a round, he wouldn't land any punches, or any significant punches, I should say. And they were wrong too. He won, in my opinion, at least 3 of those rounds. Debatably 4.
He's solid. He solidly won 3 rounds, in my opinion. He 1, 2, and 3 are McGregor.
Yeah, and whether Floyd was letting that happen just to figure him out or whatever, regardless, he still won those first 3 rounds and landed more punches than anyone has ever landed on Floyd. And
that's typical Mayweather game plan anyway. Mayweather is traditionally a slow starter. I think I brought it up last week, but I might not have. McGregor is typically a fast starter. Mayweather is traditionally a slow starter. He was actually at the midpoint of the fight against Oscar De La Hoya. He was losing on points. Mm-hmm. He started so slow. And then he won it going away. Down the stretch, he won every single round and came out on top of Oscar. That's Floyd's traditional game plan is very conservative early on. Don't give you a lot to counter. See what you're going to do. Give you a lot of feints. And then going down the stretch, when you start to tire and your volume goes down, his volume goes up. Yeah. And plus, he's already figured your stuff out. Now there's not as much zip in it as there was. He starts to counter it. This is great. You probably couldn't hear it because you were at the you were at a restaurant and it was probably loud in there. But if you got to see the bits of the training footage of him training guys at the gym, because that's what he wants to do now. He wants to be a trainer. And he's been already doing it. He was training guys at his gym. And the fighter he was talking to was like rushing. And he's just like, slow down, be patient. Believe me, I beat everybody I ever beat with patience.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said. He said, I've beat everybody with patience.
Yeah. And
so that slow start is typical Mayweather game plan. Like, just looking at the punch stats, right? Through round 3, he throws 6 punches in round 1, 10 punches in round 2, 12 punches in round 3. Okay?
Now around 10.
That is a total. It's kind of funny because it's going to add up to the same number. That is a total of 28 punches.
Mm-hmm.
Round 4 begins. He throws 31.
Ooh. So
his volume in round 4, he throws more punches than he threw in the previous 3 rounds.
That's probably why I gave it to him.
Yeah, and so while he was doing, by the way, those same early rounds, Conor 34, 42, 39.
Sounds exhausting.
And then in round 4, he throws 65. Round 5, he throws 51.
Jesus.
And it's like going down the stretch here, you're seeing these almost at 50 or over 50 punch outputs from Conor. And guess what? He gassed.
Yeah.
So Mayweather's game plan is built around the fact that he's so experienced at going 12 rounds, and it has been for a long time. That wasn't something he rolled out just for Conor. He's done that to so many of his opponents.
Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't even see the final round.
What?
When round 9 ended, first, let me back up. I'd been drinking beer for those 6 hours, and I had to pee by the time round 2 started.
You missed the knockout on a piss break?
No, I rewatched it. When I was watching the highlights, I saw it. But at the end of round 9, it was over. You could just tell at round 9, if that round lasted maybe 10, 15 seconds later, then I don't think it would have went to round 10. It was just that decisive. And after round 9, I was like, well, I had to piss so bad it was hurting, and it was obvious Conor was going to be out in the next round, and sure enough, by the time I came back, the fight was already over. So, yeah. But I did see it, but I didn't...
Yeah, but you didn't see it live. You missed seeing it live for a piss break.
I just knew what was going to happen.
God damn it, man. You should have, it took 30 minutes for them to walk out and get introductions. You should have just, drained it during that.
I didn't have to pee until round 2.
You see, and this is where just, the experienced fight night alcoholic in me is just no. You always pee before the fight.
Man, I was holding hard, okay? It hurt. And after round 9, I was like, damn it, he's lost. What? Is it really that likely that he's going to catch Floyd, who was at pretty much, he was at 100% in round 10, and McGregor was running on fumes, that McGregor was going to catch him with one good, left straight and knock him out? Hell no. I wasn't missing anything. I knew what was going to happen. But I did see it in the highlights, and I think it was 100% fair in that stoppage.
Yeah, I agree, and it was it was in my mind merciful because
Mayweather said the ref saved him.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember something. I guess that whenever I looked at that, I guess Conor's fans wanted to see him get his face caved in. But,
whose fans? What?
I guess Conor's own fans wanted to see him get his face caved in. Because it was not going well.
No, it was about round 6 or 7, it was very much one-sided.
If you really love that guy, why would you do that? Oh yeah, and you've seen some of the people. You've seen people talk about why Floyd wore a ski mask out to the ring.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so apparently some people thought it was like a reference to like some of the like Antifa and Black Lives Matter things and all that. Not at all, actually. The reason he wore a ski mask was a reference to a movie he loves called Dead Presidents, and it was because the movie, if you've never seen it, it's about a bank robbery, and he was coming out to rob the bank.
That's great.
That's basically what he was saying. It was just that he was going to fight a bank robbery, that he was just going to come out and take everybody's money.
Now, last thing we could talk about is something that you told me not to bring up, but I have to.
Oh shit, what is it? I probably forgot.
What is your opinion on the conspiracy that it was a throne fight?
Oh, fuck, man.
Because apparently, granted, I read this on a questionable news source, that Mayweather's ex-girlfriend said that it was a throne fight.
Yeah, she couldn't possibly have any motivation to throw some shit at him,
I was
right?
about to say, that has no weight whatsoever, but there are a lot of people saying that it was a fake fight, saying that Conor was intentionally holding back, and I just wanted your opinion on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Jesus.
I was looking forward to this.
I just want to understand what it looks like inside the brain of somebody who is stupid enough to think that a guy who's never had a boxing match, a professional boxing match in his life, and hasn't had a boxing match since he was a teenager, period, walks into a ring with arguably the greatest boxer to ever live.
I don't know, it's pretty undisputed now. 50-0.
It's the only thing to that is, if he could have, faced some of the true greats at his weight. He faced some great fighters, but could he have beat a legendary name like Sugar Ray Leonard or something like that?
That's his record. So
50-0, and but somebody whose name gets to go in the pantheon with Muhammad Ali and Rocky Marciano. His name gets to go down with Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard and, the true greats of boxing.
Yeah.
So that guy goes up against a guy who's never had a professional boxing match. He spends the first few rounds figuring him out. Then he starts fighting outside of his own style, pressing, getting hit in the face, and absolutely wrecks the guy. There was no pulling. By the way, anybody who thinks Conor was pulling punches, you need to watch the uppercut that landed.
Yeah,
because he was not pulling that one.
And there was a body shot. There was a body shot that was pretty vicious.
Yeah, he wanted that to rip off Floyd's head, and I think it took a little bit of his heart when it didn't. I think whenever Floyd looked up at him after that and smiled.
Oh man,
you just landed a good shot. A shot that's finished guys for you. All right. So all I want to know is just what goes through the mind of somebody who's stupid enough to actually look at that fight and think it's fixed. To think that those guys had to fix that fight to come out with the result that anybody sane already knew was going to be the result of the fight, because Conor McGregor, he surprised people, and Floyd out of his own mouth said that the biggest surprise in the fight wasn't Conor's power. It was his boxing skill. It was that he showed him some skills in boxing. And, as hype as I was, drunk me, looking at Floyd as like, the defender of our sport. I say our sport because, for anybody listening who doesn't know, I actually did box for a little while. It was fun, but, so I'm really, really protective. Fun. It was. It was. I stopped at fun to stop from going on story time. So, anyways, it was, to me, like he was defending boxing from the invader. And so as much as I like Conor, I'm a big fan of his in MMA actually. And as much as I said, get the hell out of boxing, I actually don't want him to get out of boxing. I want him to come back, and I want him to, continue bringing the attention to the sport that he can and box some more people and improve. Because with what he showed there, it'd be really interesting to see what he could do if he actually tried to develop in the sport and continue on down the path. He could actually end up being a legendary boxer himself if he went over and continued to develop down that path.
The thing that I'm worried about, though, is the potential, because we were talking about last week about the money that could be made in boxing and the pay-per-view buys, and I think after this pay-per-view, it was so big that if Conor tried to box probably anybody, it wouldn't be near the amount that...
Oh, no, it wouldn't be near the amount, but it'd still be more money than he's going to make in the UFC.
I think he should stay in the UFC, personally.
I mean, he probably should, but he said that he might try to compete in both sports periodically, so we'll see.
It's asking a lot from a 29-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody can do it, he can do it. I mean, hats off to him, he's a great athlete, but to touch back what you wanted me to touch on, man, people who think that fight is fixed. Did you fucking eat paste in school? Did you wear a football helmet? And is this, like, can you read? Can you do math? Does this thing that's between your ears, does it work?
I wonder what the percentage is of people who believe that was a fixed fight versus the people who believe that the earth is flat. I wonder if there's any relation.
Probably the same people. But yeah, that's just, it's so blatantly stupid. I don't think anybody who's ever boxed or competed in MMA or really done any kind of sports is going to be in that camp, because you can tell when somebody's taking shit off their punches, and neither one of them are taking anything off their punches. You can tell by their hip rotation and the way their feet are moving and the planning. You can tell.
Right.
That was not some.
But it was a great fight. I was very satisfied with it. I didn't pay the $100, but I paid $60 to watch it at a restaurant, and I was happy with it.
Yeah, and it's it was a good event for boxing. I'm actually, I'm pretty happy that Conor stuck his neck out there to bring the attention to boxing that he did.
Yeah.
And I hope that maybe some of the people who tuned in for this fight, I'm sure like the hyper MMA fanboys that, don't think anything else is real fighting, or don't think, anything else is any good. There's probably no reaching those guys, but I hope that some of like the casual fight fans that probably took a look at this just because of the name Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather being up there together, I hope they stick around and see that boxing as a sport has a whole hell of a lot more to offer. There's a fight coming up just September 16th. I started to say 17th, but 16th, between Canelo Alvarez and Golovkin. And those two are both in their prime. They are both phenomenal fighters coming off big win streaks. Alvarez has one loss in his entire career to Floyd Mayweather. And Golovkin, his record is amazing as well. The two of them should have one of the best fights that boxing has seen in a little while. It should be, frankly, a lot more competitive even than this one.
This is on pay-per-view?
This is on pay-per-view on the 16th. And but those two...
People just paid $100 for a pay-per-view.
I don't think this is a $100 pay-per-view. I think this is like a 40 or 50.
No. I know it's not, but people just paid a $100 pay-per-view. Do you think they'll shell out another $50 for another pay-per-view?
I will. But
well, you will, but I mean, how many millions of pay-per-view buys were there for this fight?
Well, there's now conflicting reports. One was that it was going to be 6.4 million, which would dwarf the Pacquiao card.
Mm-hmm.
But now there are some people saying that it didn't beat the Pacquiao card, that those numbers are flawed. So we'll have to wait for final numbers. We don't have final numbers right now.
There was a shitload of illegal streaming. An event that big, I mean, it's pretty. You have to expect that kind of stuff. There's not much you could do about it.
But it was apparently absolutely ridiculous. I'm actually looking up the holy shitballs. It's actually an $80 pay-per-view. And that's one of the problems boxing's got to solve and they're working on solving it right now with the World Boxing Super Series, which is, not going to all air on pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that'll be good. But yeah, this is an $80 pay-per-view. I'll pay it. But I mean, even if people have to even if you can't watch it live, YouTube it or find it online or illegally stream it or something, and take
to be clear, you are condoning piracy.
If it will get people into the sport, and then they may one day invest money into, because it's big to ask people to invest money into a sport that they may not have got a chance to get into yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if people would just live stream this and get a view of what boxing looks like whenever two people who are both in their prime and ready to go at it look like, I feel like this fight, boxing's got a lot more to offer, is all I'll say, than just one rare event that like this. This is more of an event than just a fight,
right? Yeah.
And I feel like boxing as a sport, if people enjoyed at all the sport that they saw during the undercards or during Mayweather and McGregor's actual match, I feel like that if they take a look at a fight like Alvarez and Golovkin, they might find that this sport has a lot more to offer them than they thought.
For sure. Well, we're at an hour and a half, so we probably should wrap this up.
Oh yeah, definitely. One final thing. You've seen my prediction on what Conor is gonna turn his attention to immediately after this was right, haven't you?
What's that?
He's looking for the trilogy fight with Diaz.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, it really was. Some people thought that he was gonna go for the 155-pound number one contender, but it was obvious he's going to go for the next money fight, and the next money fight is finishing the trilogy with Diaz. But we'll see how that happens, because Diaz is asking for $20 million.
Ooh.
And if he gets 20, Conor's probably going to ask for 50 or something ridiculous. So we'll see if the UFC even. We can see if the UFC, because he just got 30 for Floyd,
mm-hmm.
and he's going to ask for more, because that's just how it goes. So. Or he'll ask at least for double what Nate gets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it might be 40 that he asked for, but we'll see if the UFC can make that happen with the two of them, because that's what Nate said just today, actually, was that he wanted $20 million to make it happen. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and cut it off here. Next week, have no idea what we're going to talk about. So if you
didn't really today either.
Not really. We just knew that we were going to talk about the fight, but kind of just winged it until then. But just like before, if you guys have anything you would like us to talk about, just give us a comment on YouTube or email. The email's in the description. But until next week, I'm Sean.
And I'm John.
See you guys later. Thanks. Me. All right.